So we'll quickly go through some introductions, and of course we have an agenda and quite a bit that we're going to talk about over the next hour and a half, 2 hours. So my name is Allie Wallace. I am the manager of Global Faculty-Led Programs, which means that I work with faculty, of course, in the proposal process, in the proposal stage, as well as working with them once we have approved proposals and applications to fit them to a program administrator in GEO, really through training all the way up to departure and return. And then of course I work with the GEO faculty-led program administrators. Brittany, do you want to introduce yourself? And then of course, Achim and Ariane and
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Brittany Stamko. I'm one of the program administrators in the Global Education Office. And so I work with the faculty and the vendors on the ground, helping to coordinate the programs and helping you have a successful program.
Sure. My name is Achim Noch, and I do marketing and outreach for the Global Education Office. So I'm usually in charge for creating flyers or templates for flyers that administrators can use, and then the entire website, email marketing campaigns. And right now also social media, since we don't have student workers for that, and much more. So when you have any needs or so, I can help with that. And I also work closely with all the team members.
And would you all like to introduce yourselves and what role you have here at Mason? So I know both of you, so, or all three. Oh, there you go.
I guess I can start. My name is Greta Ann Heron. I'm in neuroscience. We had originally tried to propose a technology and neuroscience Germany trip and are kind of partway through the proposal process, and then COVID hit. And so our exploratory trip got postponed, and we're just kind of stuck in limbo right now until we hear more about how the new timelines are and all of that other stuff. So.
Hey, hi. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure who's going to go. So I'm Rashid Hassan. I'm this Global Business. We actually had an ongoing program to take students in from my entrepreneurship social impact class to Colombia that was canceled last year because of the COVID. And so definitely want to resume that at some point. And I do have another course that we just launched in the business school around stakeholder capitalism. And we do intend to take students overseas to see how the business norm and are different in different culture in different countries to give them more exposure. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to kind of resume in some fashion.
Awesome, great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Moses Dobson, and I'm in the Criminology Law and Society Department. And I was fortunate to travel to Brussels and The Hague the year before COVID started, and I was due to go again. But I'm really interested in getting more things started for our students to go overseas. I was the professor who led a semester-long program in France at my previous university. So I'm very keen to get back out there. And I'm a former Foreign Service officer with experience in Colombia, by the way. I was very excited when I saw study abroads to Colombia because it's a great country.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course I recognize you. It took me a second to recognize you, but I'm glad you were able to join us. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. We do have a pretty packed agenda, and of course we want to give you all some time to ask questions and share. So overall, this is what we're going to be talking through today. I will kick us off here with a few definitions, of course, explanation of the differences between customized programming and embedded programming, as well as just the program proposal overview. And then my colleague Brittany will go into some details about what proposals look like, some of our proposals that we really enjoyed reading, as well as some that we had questions on. And then we have some time for questions and answers at the end. you all probably have a good handling of what this terminology is, or these definitions are, but we throw around a lot of words that we use in study abroad that we've sometimes have to kind of pull ourselves out and think about, like maybe not everyone knows what these words mean, but customized programming in the world of faculty-led, customized programs are pretty much what you hear of all the time. I think actually 2 of you have run embedded programming, but overall customized programming is the standard for faculty-led. This is where faculty take students abroad, but those students are earning Mason credit. And the timing can be anywhere from 1 or 2 weeks up to a full semester. But they are standalone programs where they are not connected to a semester course, unlike the Columbia program and the program to The Hague. And where else did that program go? Amsterdam? Is that where it went? Anyway, so yeah, the customized programs are most popular. With that being said, we also do run embedded programming. So this would be programming that is connected to a full semester course. So students are here on campus, we're online taking a 3-credit class, and then they go abroad for 1 or 2 weeks, often without additional credit. So embedded is a reverse model. It's just a supplemental travel. We also use these words providers. A provider is a third-party organization, university, nonprofit, or for-profit business that helps us with our group travel logistics. This can be anything from literally a turnkey provider that does every single thing, including booking our flights, to a provider. A provider could be a hotel or a coach company. So we use this a lot after the proposal stage because we're going to start wanting to talk about money and budgets and that financial piece, and they come in at that point. Academic director is what our faculty are. They are called academic directors, AD for short, but this is just the instructor or the faculty that accompanies the students abroad. And then program administrator, that would be the GEO staff that we have working with the academic director. So for each program, there's typically 1 program administrator, and they are the main point of contact between the faculty, the provider, the student, and GEO, as well as you know, any stakeholder in that program. Customized programs, I've already kind of gone into this, but like I said, these are by far our most program. They are standalone courses, so that means that most, if not all, of the learning happens abroad. They can range again from 2 weeks, 1 week, to even a full semester. And the travel happens during a university break, of course. So we are sending students abroad over spring break, summer, winter break, and then that full semester. And this is, of course, not thinking through the lens of COVID-19. So when a student goes abroad on a customized program, one of the really strong benefits is that they are receiving Mason credit. So the academic director is also that faculty of record. So when our students go abroad over winter break, they're almost always earning 3 credits. Spring break is almost always 3 credits. Summer, it's normally 6 credits, and then a full semester would be anywhere from 12 to 15 credits, and that does come back as Mason credits, as I said. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the academic director and GEO, we have shared recruitment responsibilities and just shared responsibilities for the program. And overall, we tend to send 1 faculty member per program. That isn't to say it's a hard and fast rule. We can support 2 faculty, but there are additional questions that we'll ask about how many students, like a minimum of students, do we need to increase our minimum of students? How expensive will it be to bring in a second faculty? Because the faculty's travel costs get amortized over the students' expenses. So there are things that we'll talk about if we are going to bring 2 faculty on a program, but we do have them and they are very successful. So one thing I'll note, and this is it might be a little bit confusing, but for those of you who have run a global discovery program, customized programs don't offer funding for the entire program. This means that we're not going to just give a blanket scholarship to everyone who attends a customized program, but we do have a lot of individualized scholarships, as well as links to external scholarships. So there's lots of opportunities for students to get funding to pay for or to cover some of their trip. as well as, and it's not mentioned here, but students who do customized programs are eligible to use their financial aid. We don't advise on financial aid. We, of course, send students to the financial aid office because there's always exceptions to rules, but generally, right, financial aid could be an option. And then, of course, for customized programs, academic directors do receive a salary. For a 3-credit program, we offer a salary of $3,500. That's not per faculty. So if you want to run a 3-credit course with 2 faculty, that $3,500 gets divided by 2 faculty. Same way with the $7,000 for 6 credit. If you're running a 6-credit course with 2 faculty, you would split that salary however you all see fit. Embedded programming. So again, I believe at least 2 of you now have run embedded or global discovery programming. It's nothing. It is almost a reverse model of customized. So students are attending a semester course here on campus or online. It can be online, and then they're traveling either over spring break or right after the semester ends, and it's connected to that semester course they just took. One thing I'll note is that travel is required to be less than 14 days. While travel can be credit bearing, it's rare. And there are strict financial aid and registrar rules, policies that accompany when students can travel embedded programming. So we have to work within those and stay compliant with federal law. Other than that, embedded programming, the academic director, typically we're targeting very specific students, so they have I guess a heavier hand in recruiting. But one thing I will note, and this is embedded programming, because it's so frequently associated with global discovery, embedded programming, students are covering the cost of the faculty to travel, but because there is often not credit, we do want to make it competitive. So we are very cost conscious on these programs because the travel is pulled apart from tuition. And if it's not credit bearing, will most likely not be eligible for financial aid. We have paused our global discovery programs, but when we reinstate those, it is good to know that every student who attends a global discovery program is given a 50% scholarship to travel. That does not include tuition, but that includes things like airfare, hotel, group meals, group excursions. So again, we're not really sure when we're going to bring these programs back up, but they are very popular because of course you're taking students abroad for a fraction of the cost of what it would normally cost, I guess, to be there. And I'm trying to remember exactly how much, like, for example, the Columbia trip typically costs over spring break. And I want to say after the scholarship, it was around $600 or $700 that students had to pay out of pocket. So it can be very affordable. So of course, I want to just jump into customized proposals. Why are they important? What are we asking for? So overall, they are a starting off point. So when you submit a proposal, we are not asking that you have everything set in stone. There's no gray area, because we know that that's not how running programs works. But we are going to be evaluating the academic and cultural integrity of your program, meaning that we are wanting to make sure that we can tie your travel and the abroad experience back to Mason credit as well as cultural learning. So applications for 2022, that includes spring, summer, and fall 2022, as well as winter break 2023, will be open from February 1st to May 1st. And we do require that you work with your academic department to get approval to run the course. And it's part of the application process. We ask for a letter of support from a chair or dean. So building your program, there are a lot of things to consider, and I think some of this goes without saying, but you will be asked to answer some of these questions. So where do you want to go? Who do you want to target your program to? This is really all, like, this is we will defer to you. We have some programs, like for the student population, that it's open to everyone from freshmen all the way up to lifelong learners, auditors, graduate students, et cetera. And then we have some programs that are very specific. Students need to be at least a sophomore level. They need to have whatever language capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an entire section on the proposal that's going to ask for you to let us know who will you allow into your program and who won't you. Other things that you all, we would ask that you all think about would be, how much time do you have to devote to program planning and travel? One thing that I'll note, and again, it probably goes without saying, is that first year programs are the most difficult because you are building something up completely from scratch, and you're recruiting to students who've never heard of this program before. So there's not word of mouth, there's not this historical knowledge through the department or even through the university. So this first year is in a lot of ways the most challenging year. And so of course, one thing that we're thinking through is we want something that will be sustainable. Can you do this every year or every other year, depending on how large your student population is? And of course, like how much time for this first year do you have to dedicate to program planning? And then other things like, what do you want to include in your itinerary? Where do you want your students to go, both academically and culturally? And how much is this going to cost? So I'm actually going to just show you what the application page looks like, because I tried to do a screen recording and technology, we're not friends. So this is just going to be this is the easier way for me. And it's loaded. Can you all see that the screen is loading? Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So hopefully it doesn't take this long to load for you. I have a lot of old applications in my portal, which I think maybe is why it's taking a very long time. While we're waiting on that, I do want to show you. This is the request for proposal page. You can see right now it says this program is currently not accepting applications. I will share this link with you all in the chat, because this is where you will start your application February 1st through May 1st. So on February 1st, a little button right here will show up that says apply now. It has the entire request for proposal RFP, as well as my email address. So if you have questions, you can reach out. So let's pretend you have started an application. If you've never been in our website before or have logged in, so Greta Ann, you should be okay. But actually in our system before. If you haven't though, you will have to set up an account using your Mason credentials. If you have, then again, you're good. You will be taken to a page that probably won't have as many programs as I have, but at the bottom will say GEO Customized New Programs Portal. And this is probably going to look different than what you've done in the past. There's been some remodeling of Teradata, but here's the application. I do want to highlight that if you click on this, it takes you back to that main page, like I showed you. If you click on requirements, it just takes you to this main page where it says online application. Later on, your program information can pop up here, and then later on, after the approval process, you can upload things like your flight, your visa if that's required, program materials, etc. So none of that is super urgent right now, but it's even after you're approved, this remains your portal throughout the program. Another feature I really like is if you click here where it says click here, it takes you to a page that includes all the documents that you will need for the application. So it's really all here, but of course, if you can't find something or you have questions, that's what I'm here for too. So Brittany's going to take a little bit deep dive into some of this, but I just want to highlight that this administrative duties through proof of first aid and CPR certification, these are documents that you have to read and sign off. But I would suggest really reading them because it's helpful information. Specifically, this financial processes, it's probably going to change because I don't know if any of you have heard, we've actually switched over from the, TRS travel to a new system. It's being rolled out and you can actually take that training through Mason Leaps. But anyway, this is really important. I think the financial part of programming tends to be the most frustrating part of programming because we do put responsibility on faculty if you are paying for services out of pocket abroad to bring that home and reconcile. So definitely read these steps. Program administrators, me, we are here to help with marketing. Like I said, it's a shared responsibility, but we also put, from the jump off, we put ideas right here, because part of the proposal process, we ask for you to give us your marketing plan. So here are some great ideas that we can use if you're not sure what your marketing plan is. So again, after you read through every section, you would just click mark as read. One thing I'll point out too is that if you are new to Mason Abroad, we have links here that can walk you through how to get into the system and use the system. And I believe Sammy Sankoski is our program enrollment system manager. So she does all the Teradata stuff, Mason Abroad stuff. She's adding videos. So YouTube tutorials essentially. And I want to point out that in the chat, Ahim just wrote that the GEO marketing has a generic email GEOPR, so GEOPR@gmu.edu. We can also add that here. But if you have marketing questions, why not turn to the expert, right? So again, all of this is just documentation for you to read through, but you can also come back and reference it later on, which I think that we haven't emphasized as much in the past, but we do. It's here. It's here for your benefit. It's here for our benefit. Anyway, so I'm going to not go through this in detail because Brittany is going to, but I want to say a couple things really quick. One, you can open an application as early as February 1st. You don't have to immediately submit that application. You can come back and add information to it until May 1st. After May 1st, you can't add anything. So it's here. It's not a one and done. You can, because you'll see that there's 5 parts to the proposal, but every single part has multiple questions or blanks. The other thing I want to point out is that the save button will save your proposal, but it's not going to actually submit it to GEO. So when you are done and you want to make no more edits, you want to click done. Up until then, you'll want to click save. Okay. So I've teased you all a little bit about the difference between global ed, or the GEO responsibilities and academic director responsibilities. It's a Venn diagram. It's not GEOs in one corner and the ADs in the other. We do a lot of sharing of these, but I will say that GEO is going to be more of this behind the scenes type of organization that we're going to be doing. We're going to be making sure that things are going off without a hitch with our providers or in-country partners, right? We're the ones that are mailing them or calling them or emailing them financial documents, W-8s, things like that. We are also doing a lot of advising. We're collecting these applications because the students also use Mason Abroad to apply for positions, and we're doing training. So that, but when I say we're also advising students, we're also working with the faculty to make sure that we're providing them with resources on recruiting, resources on in-country considerations, things like that. On the academic director side, you all, of course, are this program is your idea, it's your passion, your academic focus, etc. So we are going to defer to you when it comes to your syllabus and your itinerary and your program. We may offer suggestions on how to make the logistics run smoothly, but you are the one that's creating that itinerary in country. There's also a lot of emphasis on the faculty to recruit students because you all, of course, are oftentimes in the classroom, and so, or on Zoom, whatever it is. So we would ask that you get in front of students, of course, and recruit for your program. There's some shared responsibility with that. Greta Ann, yes. Do you have a question?
Do you guys have a list of best practices for recruiting? And if we've never led a program before, is it kind of standard to ask all your colleagues to go into their classroom, or surely there's stuff that works and stuff that is not a good use of our time?
That's a great question. I can tell you, I know the best practices, yeah, we typically share that with faculty once we get to that stage, but there's a lot of legwork before we get there. What we typically do, I mean, COVID has changed things a little bit, but we normally come up with a very extensive class visit Excel sheet, and we share courses that we think would work for the program with the faculty. We ask the faculty to reach out to their colleagues, like you mentioned, to get 5 minutes in a class if you're not the instructor. We also take some of that, and then we typically, under a normal year, we've in the past had peer advisors that have done that as well. So I guess it's a shared responsibility in that we know, like, if we, like, say it's Brittany, right, and she's the program administrator on your program, we may identify 25 classes for your program that we could go and recruit in. 25 classes is a lot, so we may say, like, you all as the faculty pick, because there's 2 of you, right, pick 15 to 16 classes to ask for your to ask your colleagues if you can come in and talk it, and then we may take some of the rest. What we have found is that faculty asking other faculty for 5 minutes to go into the class and ask tends to have a higher success rate than if Mason-led or GEO asked a faculty member to go in, which we tend to have a higher success rate than a student asking a faculty, right? So we would, that's just, I mean, in general, yes, but yeah, we do have a more extensive best practices list of what to do.
And when you say success rate, do you mean the ability to go into that classroom, or do you mean that you get students from that visit?
I mean the ability to get into the class. Yeah. Which then, of course, I think a ripple effect of that is there are students who sign up for the program because of our success getting into the class. And it's not to say that we get like hard no's from faculty. Is even response rates of faculty emailing other faculty is higher than yeah. That's a good question. Right. So we also ask academic directors to, as part of the recruiting process, host info sessions or things of that nature, where you can, dedicate 1 hour and invite students from all over Mason to either do a Zoom meeting or come into GEO and chat through the program. We've had some faculty that do movie nights, that they play movies that are related back to their program. Yeah, I mean, even during COVID, we had one faculty get really creative and do a virtual scavenger hunt for his program in Greece. I mean, so the sky is the limit. We will obviously give you lots of ideas, but that doesn't mean you should be boxed into that. If you have resources or like students that you've in the past, even if just here at Fairfax, that you could use as recruiters. I mean, there's, again, those are all just conversations to have. We also ask faculty to be part of the pre-departure breakout session. This is during the orientation, the pre-departure orientation. It's about a 45-minute to 1 hour conversation where we're talking specifically about your program, your considerations for whatever location you're traveling to, wherever I mean, it can be very specific, and it should be specific, right? Talking about what to pack, what not to pack, things like that. And then, of course, I mean, it probably goes without saying, but in-country support. So while the program is traveling, you are there to support students, both academically and in case there are any issues. We, of course, have a 24/7 emergency number, so we're not going to send you off into the night and say, good luck, we're here. But obviously, if there is an urgent situation, right, we, contacting GEO, contacting local emergency numbers, etc. So there's also training on that. So that's kind of the very simple breakdown of responsibilities. Okay, so I'm actually gonna turn it over to Brittany, but before we go on, does anyone have any questions on what I've shared so far?
I guess I just have a question about timeline, and that is, so for instance, the February to 1 work session, if you will, application season is for not this summer, but next summer. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And the reason we do that is because, and I'm gonna, after Brittany shares the good slash bad proposals that require critique, we are gonna go through important dates, but the timeline between when we ask for faculties to submit a proposal versus when we start recruiting for that program is really like 2 or 3 months. So we launch application late summer. So right now for summer 2021, we are accepting applications through March 10th. So we have to build in some buffer because of the way we do finances and things like that. And of course, especially now with COVID, right? We have to think through like, what are the requirements to enter whatever country, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
But so we are counting on running everything next summer, right?
Oh,
This is are you running stuff right now?
We are currently planning to run summer 2021 programming. And this is a great point that I actually meant to emphasize, but regardless of whether COVID exists or not, if you're traveling with students, especially because we use the Department of State travel advisories. So if you want to take students to any location that's rated a 3, which is reconsider travel, it requires the University Travel Advisory Committee sign off. With COVID-19, they are regularly meeting, and I expect that they will meet in March to decide if summer programming can run. So with COVID, what we are doing is we're working on each program individually, and we are basically coming up with a plan for like each specific, so for like the UK, right? So we are working with any partner that we have in the UK. We're asking them to come up with or to share with us what they are doing for safety procedures, policies, et cetera. And then we're going to share that information with UTAC, University Travel Advisory Committee, and they will determine if we are able to travel to that country based on Department of State, CDC, travel restrictions, and then again, what our in-country partners are doing to ensure our safety. Does that, yeah. So I'm not sure. We are moving full steam ahead because our hope is that we can run some programming, and we'll see. But for 2022, yeah, we're, I mean, obviously we've learned to like plan for the best, or hope for the best, plan for the worst, but also kind of plan for the best. So we'll see what it's like. But yeah, right now we're expecting to run programming.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Well, if nobody else has one on that a little bit, and that is, so for instance, the faculty discovery trips or whatever, we're still going to find out in March whether or not that's safe, or since there's only, one person or whatever, it would be different than if the students are running it. How does the decision-making process go for the discovery trips versus the actual programming?
By discovery, do you mean like the faculty exploratory or the global discovery? Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. They will fall under that same UTAC decision. So I think that's the kind of that first step is UTAC going to allow travel, and then second, of course, it'll be a conversation between the GEO associate director, GEO executive director, and I suppose me to decide when we can start offering those trips again, and if there are any new requirements, or not requirements is not a good word, but anything else that we need to notify faculty of if there are any changes. But yeah, so maybe late spring, you'll get an email from me. We'll see.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right. So can everybody see my screen? Yeah, okay. So now we're gonna go over some case studies of both some good proposals and proposals that need a little bit of work. So this first one that we're gonna look at is from David Luther and Tova Siegel. They proposed a program called Field Techniques in Tropical Ecology in Brazil. Hold on just a second, there we go. All right, so I have a little video here. That's going to kind of walk through the proposal. We kind of already saw some of this earlier that Ali went through. And I'm going to take you through some of the pre-decision items that are down here. That is what you're going to be filling out. So you can see that is down here where it says pre-decision requirements. That's going to open up your different forms. So we're going to start with part 1, which is academic director information. A lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Indicate which department you're with, your phone number, office address, your highest degree earned. That is to make sure that you're eligible to run a program. You do have to have at least a master's degree to run a program with our office. If you're going to have any additional faculty or staff on your program, your course or your approval letter from your department. So we can see that they have a very good letter here from their department chair supporting their proposal. Also, we want to know if you have any previous experience leading a study abroad program, whether that's with GEO, at Mason, or at a different institution. So we can know kind of what your level of comfort and familiarity with running programs and leading students abroad is. Part 2 is kind of where we go into the program details. So we see obviously the term, your start dates. This one had very specific start dates, January 4th through January 14th. Any local university services that you plan on partnering with on the ground. So this one did a really good job of identifying that institution and providing contact information. We also see their third-party service providers. They have 3 here. They provided a lot of information on the purpose for each provider, their phone number, their website. That really helps us when we go to start working on proposals for and quotes. So we have that contact information and can easily get a hold of them. We also have information on accommodations. So we want to know what the accommodations will be like for students, and then also for faculty. If there's a reason that you would need to stay in a different accommodation, we would like to know that and have a justification. And then we have a section on excursions and site visits. And so here we want to see if you've identified any specific activities yet and how you plan to relate those to the program's learning objectives. So we can see with this one, they did a really good job of identifying their excursions and site visits and provided a good description of how that's going to relate to their learning objectives. And then we have tour guides. So if you plan on using a tour guide in any of your locations, we'd like to know that information here. The more information you provide, the better. And so we can see on this one, they identified when they need a tour guide, where they need a tour guide, and also who they planned on using for that. And then also your classroom space. So if you need any space for lectures during your program, that would help us as well if we kind of know when you need that, how often you need that, and if you already have a partner identified for that space. Next, we're going to go through meals. And so I want you to describe the meal arrangements for your program participants. This also helps so we can see if students, so students can plan how much money they may need to bring if there's group meals, and then if there's meals on the end, or meals that they're going to have to plan for on their own. Want to kind of get that information to them ahead of time. Greta Ann, did you have a question?
Yeah, is this a case where we need to fill this out if we use a service provider or if we do it ourselves, or would the service provider package, if it includes that, is there a different place to put that, or how do we communicate those things?
Which area are you asking about? Meals?
Oh, for instance, accommodation, meals, and classroom space. I could imagine that would all be taken care of by our service provider.
Right. So here we just want to get an idea of what your plan is. You don't necessarily have to have it exact thing from your provider yet figured out, but we want to have at least an idea of what your plan is for that. So the more information you can provide, the better, but it doesn't have to be completely set in stone at the proposal point.
Thanks.
That's a good question. All right, so also local travel, how you plan to travel in between your accommodation and your classrooms, your excursions, and any side trips. And so if you plan on using public transportation, or if you're going to use a coach, we want to know that information here. That'll help us when we go through the process requesting quotes with the provider. And then it kind of skipped over here, but the travel to program site, this is important because we need to know whether students will be allowed to make their own arrangements for their flights, or if there's going to be a group flight. So we can take that into consideration and advise students appropriately. If there's going to be travel to multiple sites, we'd like to know that, and how you plan to get from each location to location. If you plan on having any guest speakers, we'd like you to identify that. And so we can see here they identified, they plan to have 7 guest speakers. They don't know what the speaker, or they don't have any identified speaker fees. So if you do know how much you plan on paying your speakers, or how much that's going to cost, we'd like to know that ahead of time as well, so we can plan for that in the budget. And if you do have any quotes from your providers or vendors at this point, you can attach them here. And so I'll just show a brief example of what this team provided. And so we can see that they provided some information from one of their providers. They have a breakdown of, I think on the next tab, they show a breakdown of some other budgetary items. So this is really going to help us when we start building the budget, which translates to the program fee for the student. And so as much information as we have, the better. We also want to see your itinerary. And so as much details you can provide, that will really help us. We use this information to not only work with the vendors, but then also put this on the program brochure, so students can have a good idea of what to expect each day. This one did a really good job of identifying kind of what the plan is for each day. They broke it down into morning, afternoon, and evening. Also, your name for the program. And so we have a suggestion here. Name should be 3 to 6 words and should include the subject matter of focus. So you have, for example, Spanish language in Quito, monumental politics in Athens and Rome. And then this one, for example, was field techniques and tropical ecology. So it's quick to the point, but also gets, it's also catchy. It gets the point across what the program is about. And then if the program is going to be new, or if it's a repeat program, country, city, location, and then we want to know your level of familiarity with the location. And if you aren't familiar with the location, we want to know a plan for how you plan to overcome that lack of familiarity. And so, for example, both of these professors knew or had worked in Brazil previously, and so they had a lot of familiarity with the location. And then we're going to go through academic details. And so let me go back just a little bit. The top. So program format, there's a couple different ways you can do that. Some programs have some coursework before they go abroad. Then there's the coursework that's abroad, and then post-program coursework, and any combinations of those. We have examples for each of those of what that would look like. So we would like you to identify that there. We need to know how many credits, so we know how to offer that to students, and then contact hours. So every 3 credits should have 45 contact hours. And so you want to make sure that you're getting enough contact hours to meet the number of credits that you're offering. So for example, a 6 credit program would need to have 90 contact hours. And the thing here to remember as well is classroom activities can be counted at a 1-to-1 ratio, but outside of classroom activities would be counted as a 2-to-1 ratio. So you want to keep that in mind when you're calculating your contact hours. If you have any post-program requirements, any final assignments that you would you plan on having, we like to know those there so we can adequately advise students on that. This one did a good job of explaining the written assignment. It's due approximately 1 month after the program. Also want you to identify your courses. So this one provided specific course information. This is what we'll use along with your syllabus to request approval to run those courses with the individual departments. And then if you plan on having a teaching assistant, what their role would be and their experience with location. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we want to know kind of who your target audience is for the program, your target population, if you have any specific GPA requirements outside of our 2.0 requirement, any prerequisites, and then we want to see your syllabus as well. So this is a really good example of a good syllabus. They have all the required syllabus information, required readings, learning objectives, course requirements, an evaluation, what students can expect to do in the program. And what's important to note here is they have a difference for undergraduate and then also graduate. If you are planning on offering graduate credit, you do need to differentiate what their different requirements are going to be. And we have all of the typical syllabi required information here as well. And they also added their itinerary and a tentative schedule. So again, this helps students get to know what is going to happen during the program. And then we're going to look at the health and safety considerations. And so first is the travel advisory information. And this could kind of change a lot right now with COVID. But we want you to look at the State Department's website and kind of identify where the travel advisory for that your locations currently stand. There's any health or medical considerations, whether that's immunizations, risk of disease, any extreme physical activity, access to healthcare. It's good for us to know, so not only we can advise students, but we can also share that with our health and safety team. Also, same with the weather, local situation and events, any high-risk program activities, and accessibility. So we want to be able to advise students on any accessibility concerns. And then we want to see your idea for or how you plan to do your orientation. So the breakout sessions for pre-departure, kind of what your plan is for that and what you plan to cover, and then also your on-site orientation. How do you plan on going over any on-site information? And then finally, we have marketing and recruitment. And so we want to see kind of your marketing plan. We had some ideas earlier. And so this program did a really good job of outlining different materials they wanted to use to market their program, which departments they planned on targeting. They decided to do class visits, marketing materials, online webinars. If you have any photos, we'd love to see your photos. We can use these for your program brochure, for your flyer, any materials that we're making. Same thing for videos. We can add that to your brochure and share those. And I think it missed the very end, but there's a section that asks for program description. This is what we use on your brochure to kind of highlight your program along with the program highlights. And so as detailed as you can be here within the paragraph to 2 paragraph kind of template, that really helps us in helping giving your program a good overview. So that's the first program we're going to look at. The second one is Art and Memory in Rome and Florence with Lisa Bauman and Chris Gregg. And so let's go through theirs. So again, their academic director information, pretty basic info there. I think at the bottom of this one, I wanted to highlight that they were working on getting their written approval And I think the other faculty actually, they had two proposals. Both of them submitted a proposal, and the letter of the written approval is actually on the other proposal. So they did have that. And we see that they have quite a bit of experience leading study abroad programs between the two of them at different institutions. We have very specific dates. So their dates were May 23rd, 2021 to June 20th, 2021. We have their country, all the cities they plan on going to. They described the third-party service providers they wanted to use. They were awaiting bids. So they didn't have these are two that we work with, and I think we actually suggested these to them. So we have that contact information. We have their ideas for accommodation and a good explanation on their site visits. We have their outline for classroom space, a pretty good outline for meals, local travel, and then their travel to program site. So this one, students are responsible for getting themselves there. And again, they provided a nice preliminary budget, which will help us when we're creating our RFPs for vendors, and also the budget for the overall program. So they kind of broke all of that down for us. And then they also provided their itinerary and syllabus together. So we can kind of go over those both together at the same time. Again, this was a great syllabus. Pretty good course description. They had 2 courses, so this one's going to be 6 credits. You have the learning outcomes and the graded requirements for each of those. They have the course policies, timeline, and then they have a detailed schedule for each day of what to expect and assignments related to both of those. So again, a very, very good detailed syllabus. And then we have their name, their program name. This was a new program that they were proposing, and both were familiar with and had taught programs in Rome and Florence previously. So they're both very relatively familiar with the location. Academic details. So this one is one that had all coursework abroad. We see they have 6 credits. They have their contact hours. This one provided a lot of different courses. So this is helpful not only for to recruitment wise, they have a large population of students to pull from, but then also they have backups as well, backups of courses. So in the event that one of these is not approved by the department, they still have a lot of different courses for students to choose from. And we already looked at their syllabus. Their requirements, they decided to have a 2.2 GPA, which is slightly higher than our 2.0 GPA. They didn't have any prerequisites, and we looked at the syllabus already. So I'll go over it a little bit. So their health and safety considerations on part 4, they identified COVID, local situation and events, high-risk program activities, accessibility, had a pretty good outline for their orientation, both pre-departure and on-site. And then I really wanted to highlight their marketing and recruitment plan. They were very detailed on what they plan to do. And I also wanted to add, they didn't list it here, but they did do a TikTok video. So there's a TikTok of them floating around the TikTok universe right now, which is a really good way to not only get market to Mason students, but also to non-Mason students, which non-Mason students are allowed to go on our programs. So it's a great way to kind of get a variety of hit a variety of populations. And they also provided a lot of photos. So we had a lot of photos to choose from when building their brochure page and also their flyer. And they had a really good program description and program highlights for us to add to their program brochure. So those are two examples of really good proposals. What we're gonna do now is put you into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes to kind of discuss what both of these did well, and then we'll kind of come back as a group to discuss a little bit together and see, then we'll move on to the proposals that need a little bit of work. And so I'll go ahead and do that and give you about 10 minutes.
Ralu contributed that having a good budget was important in the proposal that she did. And Greta and I agreed that having a strong syllabus and also getting support from GEO for some of the context, those things seem to be important factors in the success of the projects that we saw.
Yeah, those are great. That's great. Any other other things you guys talked about?
We spent some time just getting to know each other and what our different experiences were in leading broad programs.
Awesome. So I'll just highlight some of the other things that we wanted to note too. Those were all good things. The big thing here is both were very detailed and thorough, both with their third-party information, their cost estimates, they provided specific course numbers, they had specific program dates, they provided clear and detailed itinerary. I just realized that I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Let me do that real quick. Sorry about that. So now you should be able to see my screen. Again, going back to what was very detailed and thorough, they had a clear and detailed itinerary, both of them. They had specific credits. So like I was saying earlier, you can pull from a large population of students with diverse interests. And then you also have backups should some of these courses not get approved. Both syllabi were included all the necessary items and were academically sound. One of them submitted their proposal very early, so that's really helpful if we, so I think their program was slated for winter 2022, and, or maybe it was this summer. But either way, from the time they submitted their proposal to when their program was actually going to run, there was a lot of lead time. So that gave us a lot more time to prepare with marketing, with recruitment, with working with vendors. So we had a lot of time to work on their program. Both were familiar with the destination. And so that was very beneficial. And then also both met with GEO before submitting their proposal and got their questions answered. Any concerns that they had, and so we could help them have a good, successful proposal. Any questions about any of that? No? All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide. We're going to take a look at a proposal that needs a little bit of work. And so this is kind of what not to do. This one, so this one had the term. They did have specific program dates, but when it comes to their third-party service provider, they just listed a name. They didn't really give any other detailed information on what this provider would be doing, what support they'd be providing. And so this doesn't give us a whole lot of information to work with. Same thing with accommodation. They just put hotel. That doesn't really give us a whole lot to work with either. Where would you want this hotel to be? Do you have a specific hotel in mind? Type of hotel. Excursions and site visits, they didn't have a very good explanation for that. They didn't have a good meal description, local travel, a general idea for their program, travel to site, travel to multiple sites. For guest lectures, they put 2 guest lectures, but didn't really identify who those might be, how much their speaker fees might be, what they'd be talking about. And so that could have used a little bit more information. They didn't provide any quotes or itinerary. They did have a decent name. I will give them that. And then we're gonna go to program country. So they did have that. They weren't familiar with the location at all, and they didn't provide a very good justification for how they plan to overcome that lack of familiarity. I will say this wasn't a real proposal that was submitted to us. It was a practice submission, but it still serves as a good idea of what not to do. We have their program format, the number of credits, contact hours. So here, their contact hours, while this does equal 45, the outside of classroom activities would need to be at a 2-to-1 ratio. Post-program requirements didn't have a lot of detail. They just put paper. So what does that mean? How long the paper? What's the paper about? When's it due? This kind of information will help us when we're advising students. And so this current explanation didn't really give us a whole lot to work with. They did have a lot of courses identified, so that was good. It looks like they were going to have 2 syllabi, I'm guessing 1 for undergraduate, 1 for graduate. But they did not include the syllabus, either syllabi. Didn't have any other additional requirement. They did have 2 prerequisites, it looked like. Their academic details, actually, we just went through that. Let's look at their health and safety considerations. This looks like they didn't go into very much detail. Didn't really look into this very much. Their accessibility, they didn't provide a lot of information, so we would definitely want more information than just it's that country. That doesn't really give us any information. Same thing with orientations, both pre-departure and on-site. They did list something, but it doesn't really go into detail on what that would look like. And so we'd like to see a little bit more detail on that. And then marketing and recruitment, they did kind of identify some things that they would do, but again, not a whole lot of detail. They didn't link to any photos or videos, and their program descriptions and highlights were very minimal. And so this is not, based on this information, going to create a very enticing program brochure or program flyer for us to use to market their program. And then, Allie, do you happen to have the syllabus that we worked on to share?
I can pull it up.
Okay. Would you mind sending that to me in the chat?
Sure. Where would it be? Why am I not seeing you? Okay.
So while Allie's pulling that up, Katie, I saw you asked about contact hours. Yes. So any classroom contact hours counts at a 1-to-1 ratio, but any outside of classroom activities, so guided tours, things like that, that's counted at a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every 2 hours spent doing that equals 1 contact hour. And then you would need 45 total contact hours for a 3-credit class.
So my question, the program that I went on, a lot of times we were visiting organizations and there was the tour with a presentation. How are you going to count that if you're doing both things at a location? I mean, having the kids sit in a classroom, that isn't really conducive to the kind of learning we're trying to get them to do. The kind of learning that we want them to do requires that engagement. So I'm trying to verify and understand this, because it seems to me that a tour of a facility involved in justice, for example, because this is a law and justice program, that's where they learn more than having a talking head talking at them.
So I think a couple of things to note. First, that program that you went on was embedded, so we didn't count contact hours because there was no additional credit. But
Okay.
second, yeah, if it's a academic lecture, right, and the lecture is directly related to the learning outcomes in the syllabus, it could be counted as one-to-one. Same with the tour, but if the tour is more supplemental and not an integral part of the syllabus, then we probably lean towards on the safe side and do 2-to-1. I mean, ultimately, that decision of is it a required part of the syllabus that should be 1-to-1 versus a 2-to-1 because it's a out of class activity doesn't really come from specifically GEO, but really what we're doing is we're collecting your syllabus, and then we're turning around and taking your syllabus as well as the requested credits and asking the academic department to approve it. So they're going to be making those final decisions. So we're just kind of trying to clear up some of that gray area. But that's a good question. If there's a tour and then immediately after a tour, a lecture, what does that go to, the 2-to-1 or the 1-to-1? And I think it comes down to the specific event. Right. So if it's a brewery tour, it's nothing, right? But unless you're doing like something directly related to like food and beverage or, beer making, which is a thing where but if you're doing a tour and that's just 100% cultural, then it's definitely easily 2-to-1. But I've been on programs where our students go from actually wasn't when I was at Mason, but we took students to Korea, and it was a sports management program, and they met with the head of Adidas. That you can argue that that's exactly what they should be doing because they're a sports management master's degree and they're speaking with a sporting goods company. So we could maybe say that that's 1-to-1, but we would look at it individually, each event.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
I was going to say that's helpful for me too, and that our plan is a lot like what you're describing, Katie, where we're going to go into these labs and then they're going to sit down with us and tell us about their research, which feels like the gray area between classroom and tour, but directly related to the neuroscience, right? So yeah, but is driving in a bus past a couple of buildings, does that count as classroom?
So I think so for our contact hours, if you are driving on a bus with someone and there is a tour guide and there is cultural learning, perhaps. But if you were to get on a bus and everyone has their headphones on and they're sleeping, and no, as well as if you get to like the Louvre, which you're not going to France, but let's pretend, and you just hand people tickets and say, see you in 6 hours, that's 0 contact hours. It has to be a guided tour. So there's got to be someone giving some sort of structured overview. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Looks like it's muted. Those are great questions. So now I want to kind of just give an overview of a syllabus that would need some work. And so the previous program we looked at, the proposal didn't have a syllabus, but this is an example syllabus that we put together that would need a little bit of work. So it has some information, has the overview, has some expectations, but evaluation doesn't really go into detail on what each of these items are going to look like, what the due date is, what their expectations of are the students. We have learning objectives, the itinerary, we have the credits, but that's really it. And it looks a lot like a resume. So we would want something a little bit more substantial, more like the earlier syllabi that we looked at when looking at these. So I'm going to go back to my presentation screen. on just a second. So while I'm getting this back up, what are some things from this most recent proposal that needed some work? What are some things that you see needed work?
I just noticed that I think I'm worried more about like making sure that all the logistical details are in place, but I'm getting the feel back from you guys that the academic plan is really important too, because you're emphasizing the syllabus needs to be very, you know, filled out and specific. And so that's interesting. That's helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one thing I'll add to that is that, I mean, like I said at the beginning, nothing has to be set in stone. What we typically do is, I think yeah, you're right. We do emphasize the academic component because when we first start advertising this program, the 3 questions or the 2 questions we get are what kind of credit can I get and the cost. So they're both very important, but when we're requesting approval for credits from the academic department or departments, that can take some time. And so you're really, if you're coming in with that strong syllabus and you have specific courses you want, it really does kind of put you at step 2 or 3. With that said, when the app closes on May 1st, if you have, like, you can let us know, like, hey, my syllabus is just a rough draft, or I plan on making some edits. We would require like a final syllabus probably in September, October. So it doesn't have to be complete. Like, you can come back and edit it, and we'll give folks like a 2 or 3 month leeway to work out some details for sure.
Great insights. Any other things you guys saw that could potentially be issues? All right. So I'll just kind of highlight a few things. This one had a lack of depth and detail. So many of their responses were very limited in detail. They were not familiar with the location, and so that kind of hinders their ability to be successful there. And they didn't provide a good explanation of how they plan to overcome that lack of familiarity. And then they had missing materials. So they had a missing syllabus, missing itinerary, and well, that could result in conditional approval. Sometimes it could result in some issues down the road. So with that, I think, Allie, did you want to go over the timeline?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a pretty simple timeline, and this is really just to talk through the proposal process. Like I've said, the applications will open on February 1st. And they will close on May 1st. Prior to February 1st and during that entire application cycle, you are always welcome to email me. We can have a chat about any questions you have. We can do idea sharing, whatever you're comfortable with. May 1st, apps close. So at midnight or 11:59, after that time, you'll no longer be able to open and edit the materials or the questionnaires in Mason Abroad. So from that time, from between May 1st and May 15th or mid-May, it may be quiet. It does take us a couple of weeks to go through proposals, find time where like 3 or 4 of us actually can meet in person and talk through things, or if it's on Zoom because of COVID. So that it might be quiet for a couple of weeks. That doesn't mean anything. It just means that we're just trying to get our act together and get together and chat. But we will start meeting mid-May. And so after that time, there's really 2 or 3 different types of emails you might receive from us. First is just acceptance, like, hey, congratulations, you're accepted, and then a long email of next steps. Really, the second option would be you've been conditionally approved, or we have additional questions in order to approve your application. So those are the 2 types of emails we send out. And then, of course, if a faculty member starts an application and doesn't really do anything with it, nothing's completed, we would then just withdraw the application and maybe reach out and say, like, let's try again next year. But for those of you who do complete an application, it's either like, yay, you've been approved, or let's talk out some of these things that we're unsure of. And then June 1st, and again, June 1st is like it's not a set in stone date. This could be late May, it could be up to like mid-June. GEO will introduce you, or I will introduce you to a program administrator who will be working with you on your program. So this could be Brittany, Jess, Paul Locasio. Our team, from that point of introduction through, they'll be your main point of contact. So you have student questions, vendor questions, university policy questions, things like that. They would be your main point of contact. They kind of triage, right? So they're working with faculty, they're working with students, and then they're working with our in-country partners. So those are, and then after that, that person, that program administrator, like I said, they would be giving you information on recruiting best practices and marketing best practices, as well as walking you through the steps of what trainings you would have to be doing, you would be required to do, and getting you ready for departure. I think, okay, so this is kind of overwhelming. We didn't put this here to overwhelm you, but I wanted to just show you that really throughout the year, we're kind of, almost every month, right? Every couple months, we're coming up on important dates. So reiterating that February 1st, apps open, May 1st, apps close for faculty. But for winter break 2022, so this next winter break, we will start opening student applications on May 15th. So that really gives students from May 15th, 2021 through, early fall 2021 to apply for winter break programs to travel in January 2022. So just around the corner. And back to the question, Greta Ann, that you had asked a long time ago. So if you apply for a program for summer 2022, the student applications for summer 2022 open on August 1st, 2021. So between when you get approved to when we're going to start recruiting students, it's really just a couple of months.
Do you find the students respond pretty quickly, or do they wait until the last minute? Because that's a huge application window.
And it's new, so that's a great question. We used to not do this. We used to open apps for students for summer, in November, but we have found that one of the newer responsibilities for us is that now we're also having to keep those folks who apply early engaged, because you're right, now they have August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. They have 8 months. So we are adding our communication to students so that we're keeping those folks who do apply engaged. Do I think that, we have certainly seen that more folks will apply earlier, but I still think that we have this culture of students who do apply in February. That won't change, but it gives us more time to recruit, to get the word out, for students to either figure out how are they going to finance this program. Are they going to rely on financial aid? Are they going to rely on family and friends? Are they going to get a job to cover those costs? So there's not such a rush of like, I have 2 months to apply, commit, go. It's now like it's a more leisurely pace. We've noticed an increase in our advising sessions. So we see students like 2 or 3 times instead of the one student who comes in and has 55 things to say because they haven't had as much time.
That sounds good. I'm wondering about how that goes for first-time faculty leading it, because I imagine that if a bunch of applications, if 20 applications come in on August the 1st, then we've potentially filled our program and we can relax a little bit. But if nothing comes in until March the 10th, right, then I'm really nervous about whether this program's going to run or not.
So we've never had a program where we open it and we've immediately gotten 20 applications. And I don't think that's. We have had programs where, it's the last minute, but I think a couple of things that it's left off this important dates page. One, we don't start accepting students on August 1st, because in order for us to accept students, we have to have the program fee set. So we might say to you, okay, your program's been approved. We're going to build a brochure page or a website for you. And so we need to get basic information up on that website. So that would be academic content, a basic itinerary, etc. So a student can open an application on August 1st, but until we have your itinerary set enough and the provider costs brought to GEO and worked out, we can't accept students because we're not going to ask a student to commit to a program if we don't have the fee up. So I can tell you that process comes about October, November. This year a little bit delayed because of COVID and because of the ambiguity. But like last year, we had program fees up for summer programming in late November. And that's when we started accepting students. And so then once we got the program fees up, it was a rolling application or rolling acceptance. As students completed their apps, they were accepted. In order for a student to be accepted, they do have to submit a $200 deposit, as well as complete the pre-decision materials, which vary program to program, but tends to be a quick survey, how they heard about the program, and then inputting their information if they're going to use financial aid. So it's not a terribly difficult process for students, but so if a student, I think that's what we on our end, what we're looking at is we might see that there's 20 open applications, but out of those 20 students, only 5 of them have completed the deposit and those questionnaires that they must do. So and so I think one of the other things that I'm thinking through with your question, because it's a really good question, is, and we've had this where we have some programs, like I think for a good example of this is we have historically run a program to Cuba that's a GLOA program, and it's very competitive. And so one of the things that you can do as a faculty member, if you're concerned with having a large number of students, is that you can create parameters of, I want to prioritize seniors because this is their only chance. I want to prioritize students that have a 3.5 GPA. I mean, there's a lot of parameters you can put. On the flip side of that, if you're concerned that you're not going to have enough students because your pool is quite small, you can take away some of these parameters that might constrict who can go, and you can even open it up to where when you create your syllabus, you're telling us what credit you want approval for. So I'm going to make a program up here. Like, let's say you're taking, no, I'm not, I'm going to say Kathy Wright, Dr. Wright does a great job. She takes students to Milan, and she is a communications faculty, but she has made her syllabus one of that, so offer credit in, I believe, history, if I'm not mistaken. So you don't have to just stick with one major credit. You can try to offer credit in different disciplines, right? So it's striking that balance between being specific enough that you'll get approval and broad enough that you may be able to pull students from other disciplines or colleges in that might want the credit.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, I was just using the GPA as an example. It would definitely be preferable for us to have a higher GPA, to have these students who are going to interact with these researchers have had certain classes or have a higher GPA, or just more serious students. However, we don't want to minimize the ability to recruit either. And I can imagine that there's several things that go into it. Maybe the serious students don't go on these because they are getting internships or something. I have no idea, but I just don't have a really good feel for that. So the question is in the application, we have to say, what are our parameters? Can we change our parameters after we see what the application pool is like? If it's more competitive than we expect, can we change our parameters?
I mean, there's certainly a little bit of flexibility, but I will say that the parameters get advertised on the website, on the brochure page. So if you put, we obviously will work with faculty on like GPA requirements, but our base GPA, I think, is 2.5, or is it 2.25? I think it's 2.5. So we have the kind of like our general, this is what we would require. Of course, students have to be in good standing. They can't have holds on their account. But if you were to say, like, I only want this to be open to sophomores and juniors and seniors, and then you'd have a 3.0, that does get put on the website so that when students are looking at programming, they can see that. If you want to come back in and make those changes, we could do that. I certainly think that there would be some drawbacks to that and some some wonder like if we'd want to do that sooner rather than later. I wouldn't want to get into like February and then make those changes, because then of course it's been 7 months of stricter parameters. What we can also do is, like, let's say you put a 3.0 GPA requirement on your program and someone applies and they've got a 2.9. We would defer to the faculty member to decide, because there's always circumstances that can lead to a student having to, like, you know, recover a GPA. And I've seen it on our Oxford programs where that has a 3.5 GPA requirement, but someone had like a 3.4 and they submitted in their statement an explanation that they had a bad semester, but they've been working really hard. And so for the past 3 semesters, they've had like a 3.8 and they were accepted to the program, and that was fine. So though we put things on our website, there is certainly some flexibility to think about these qualitative qualities to a student, I suppose.
So that last question, and that is, do you accept them or do we accept them?
So typically GEO is doing the accepting using the parameters set by the faculty, but certainly we've had a couple of programs where the faculty are the ones that have requested to go in and do the actual acceptance. But normally what we do is we are updating the status on this in the system, and they're getting an automated email, because we do generate an automated, like, congratulations, you've been accepted, here are the next steps. What I typically do is if the faculty wants to be really, so I guess it's a spectrum. We have some faculty that are like, use the parameters I've given you and then accept whoever you want. Obviously paraphrasing, no one's that casual about it. But then we also have some faculty who want to know every single student who's applied and completed that application, and have then, they're the ones giving the sign off. And we can do that, but we do have, like, we typically are the ones that are actually updating the status from under review to accepted. So it generates that email giving students instructions on what they should do next. Because once a student is accepted, they have, so like, I'm going to use summer as an example. So our application deadline for summer is always going to be March 10th. After March 10th, we would email any student who is under review with an incomplete application, and we would let them know, hey, your application's incomplete, we're going to withdraw you. If a student is accepted on March 10th, then they get emails saying you now need to either commit to the program and click the commit button, which then puts them in a situation where they're accepting financial obligation, they need to withdraw themselves. So there are extra steps. Once a student is accepted, they need to either commit so we can start buying or, you know, paying for services on their behalf, like hotels and coaches and sometimes airfare, or they need to withdraw. And that time, that frame of that window is really quite short. I mean, it's less than 10 days typically. Yeah. So yeah, I use summer as an example, but we have those timelines, those deadlines for every single term. So you'll see that our application deadline for spring break is November 10th. And we always have a study abroad fair. We have 2 a year. We typically have one in mid-September and we have one in mid-February. For this fall, our study abroad fair will probably look similar to spring if anyone attended. It might be virtual, but under normal circumstances, we do those either in the Johnson Center, like Dewberry Hall, or sometimes outside in front of Sub 1 if it's nice. But we're gonna have to play it by ear. I guess it'll be virtual for fall. Anyway, so yeah, none of these deadlines do you have to have memorized now. Your program administrator, once we get past that proposal process, would be the one communicating all important deadlines. And of course, like, you know, if students have questions on deadlines or payment deadlines or terms and conditions, that's part of what we do, is answer those questions. Brittany, I think you can go on. Yeah, so my suggestion and what I'm here for is to assist with any of your questions or comments or ideas. If you have a great idea or know exactly what you want to do, go ahead and start that proposal in February. But if you're still unsure, or you want some you want to, what I guess, brainstorm or shoot ideas back and forth, you're always welcome to contact me. You can contact me directly at AWALA, or you can contact Mason Led. I will be physically in the office on Wednesdays starting next week. and GEO is going to be open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But right now we're kind of rotating. So reach out to me by email, and we can either Zoom or chat on the phone. That's probably the best way to get to me until we're back to like totally in the office. And then, yeah, so I think most of you know where we are, but we're in the Johnson Center above Chipotle and Blaze. Hopefully Blaze comes back. I'm missing some pizza. And then Brittany, if you want to go to that last slide. Okay, so anyway, if anyone has any other questions, I think we have about 15 minutes. We're happy to chat.
No questions. I just wanted to thank you, Ali. Thank you, Brittany, for providing very useful information. Ali, I might take you up on that offer to meet via Zoom or to talk on the phone before starting an application myself. So if I have any questions, but yeah.
Is this for Luca?
Yeah, this is Raluca. Hi, Ali. I should have introduced myself. Yes, hi.
I recognize this voice. Okay, yeah, absolutely. You always feel free to reach out. We can have a conversation. Perfect. Well, if you all don't have any questions, yeah, you're like I said, reach out if anything comes up. We try to respond within 24 to 48 hours. And we're really excited about new programs. I mean, students get really excited, and we're constantly wanting to go to new places and do new things. So thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you both. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming.